Welcome to Achieving Student Outcomes Through Cooperative Learning, Section 3, Part 1, Introduction. Let's look again at the Cooperative Learning Continuum. Let's go back to page 16, the Cooperative Learning Continuum, for a moment. We have been over here on the left side working with starters. Now it's time to move toward the other end and examine the 3D model of cooperative learning. First, I'm going to give you an overview of the 3D model. Then we will go over the type of rope that is used in this model. After that, you will experience a 3D lesson. Next, we will debrief the lesson, and then we will go back and analyze it, step by step. Please turn to page 53, Research Quotations, and read the research for this section. Please turn to page 54, the Cooperative Learning 3D Model. The 3D model has two major thrusts or themes that are delivered simultaneously: subject matter and interpersonal skills. First, the model focuses on subject matter, perhaps some math, spelling, social studies, literature, or vocabulary words, whatever you study in your class. If you teach physical education, you might teach the rules of a game, hygiene, etc. The subject matter element of the 3D model always involves learning or practice that is content-oriented. Second, the 3D model focuses on interpersonal skills. In the 3D model, learning and using interpersonal skills is of equal importance to learning subject matter. Interpersonal skills help us work better together, get the job done, and communicate better interpersonally. Interpersonal skills are necessary for life. We use them at home, on the job, and at play. On the job, people often work in teams. Rarely do they work in isolation. One of the reasons people often lose their jobs is because of poor interpersonal skills. Both subject matter and interpersonal skills are delivered through the Cooperative Learning 3D model. Each lesson has a subject matter objective within the area you are teaching: math, science, music, physical education, auto mechanics, history, literature, technology, etc. Some examples might be writing a paragraph describing isolation policies, finding all the mistakes in a business letter and correcting them, planning a poster that will bring attention to an endangered species, solving and explaining your problems and solutions for 6 story problems, learning plays for the next football game. For all of these assignments, we give directions. We direct the students' work. You will be doing a 3D lesson in this class. The subject matter in the lesson will be the research on cooperative learning. I will be giving you directions for a task that involves learning the research. The second skill we teach students in a 3D model is an interpersonal skill. During your first experience with a 3D model, you will be practicing an interpersonal skill at the same time you are working on the subject matter. Below, direct on the 3D lesson schematic on page 54, write interpersonal skill directions. Most students don't know how to work in groups, so we will be teaching them how to interact with each other. We are going to learn about being PALS. PALS stands for participate, attend, listen, and stay on task. All 4 elements of PALS are interpersonal skills. Therefore, when we are doing the 3D model, we could use PALS in general, meaning we expect students to do all 4 while working in their groups. Or we can specify one of the PALS skills, meaning we would pick either participate, attend, listen, or stay on task as a group focus. Or we can choose an interpersonal skill designed to address a specific problem that we have noticed our students have, such as encouraging others, checking for understanding, using first names, helping without giving the answer, disagreeing politely. You need to teach students what these interpersonal skills look like and sound like. If you want a behavior, you have to teach a behavior. I will demonstrate how to teach these skills a bit later when we experience a 3D lesson ourselves. I'll give you the directions for both the subject matter and the interpersonal skill. After students know what they are to do with the subject matter and how the interpersonal skill they are to practice looks and sounds, they get into their groups and they do the work. Do is the second of the 3 Ds. On the 3D lesson schematic on page 54, write students work above do and teacher monitors observes below do. During the doing part of the 3D model, students work on the subject matter and interpersonal skill work you have assigned. This is the first part of do. At the same time, the teacher goes around the room monitoring and observing. The two things happen simultaneously. The students work and the teacher monitors. This is not the time to correct papers, complete lesson plans, or chat in the hallway with another teacher. Instead, you will have a definite, important role to play. You will monitor and observe without intruding on groups. There are specific things you will be doing. We call this the difference between being an interactionist and an interventionist. We will learn about those things later. Something to consider. Monitoring groups, yet staying out of them while the students work, can present teachers with their greatest challenge. Many teachers have rescuer tendencies. They want to help. Helping doesn't always really help students learn, however. On the 3D lesson schematic on page 54, add debrief interpersonal skill above debrief and debrief subject matter below debrief. Debriefing is the glue that holds the 3D model together. How many of you have heard that we learn by doing? How many believe it? I believe this too, to a degree. How many of you have heard that we learn from our experiences? How many believe it? I believe both of these too, to a degree, but I also believe what Dewey said about this. Dewey said that people who do not learn from their experiences, they learn from processing their experiences. I believe Dewey. People learn from processing and debriefing their experiences. If we all learn just from our experiences, no one would get drunk more than once and all second marriages would work. Or, as one participant once said, there would be no second marriages. Processing, or debriefing as we call it, is critical to cooperative learning. Both of the final steps involve debriefing. Debriefing the interpersonal skill involves students taking a look at their behavior, how they worked as a group. Debriefing subject matter involves students considering what they learned, how they liked their product, how they could strengthen it, etc. The order in which these two are done is not arranged by accident. The interpersonal skill debriefing is first and the subject matter debriefing is second. Students usually want to talk about the project they just did. Usually they are less interested in the interpersonal skill they worked on. Therefore, if you debrief the interpersonal skill first, you will keep their attention more easily because they know the subject matter debriefing is yet to come. Students will become familiar with this order and you will have less chance of losing their attention. This order is not etched in stone. You could reverse the order, but if you think that students might tune out the interpersonal skill debriefing, if you do it second, be sure to do it first. Anything that happens inside or outside a classroom has the potential to be positive if it is debriefed. Debriefing is a key to successful staff development. In-services are great, but it needs to be debriefed to maximize the learning experience. In classrooms, debriefing can help students take a look at their behavior and learn from it. We will debrief both the interpersonal skill and the subject matter in the 3D lessons we do in this course. How much time should you spend on each part of the 3D model? You want to spend approximately 1/4 of the time giving the directions for the subject matter and interpersonal skill. half of the time on students doing the assignment while you monitor and observe them, and 1/4 of the time debriefing the interpersonal skill and subject matter. For example, if you have exactly 1 hour, you would spend about 15 minutes giving the directions for the subject matter and the interpersonal skill. Spend 30 minutes doing, students will work while you monitor, and then spend 15 minutes debriefing the subject matter and the interpersonal skill. This breakdown of time doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you a rough idea. With this brief introduction, how is the 3D model the same as starters? If you said that students work together and teacher gives directions, you are correct. How is the 3D model different from starters? If you said there are 3 steps, an interpersonal skill is taught, the teacher monitors, a debriefing is held, and it tends to take longer, you are also correct. Please fill in page 55 as you listen to this presentation. This is an integral part of cooperative learning. The presentation will also walk you through page 56. To understand more about the 3D model, we will go over the parts you need to know in order to design the directions for the direct part of the model. Effective use of the 3D model necessitates the use of more rope than do the cooperative starters. Let's look again at the cooperative learning continuum. The farther you move to the right across the cooperative learning continuum, the more rope your cooperative learning groups will need. Remember that rope helps create the structure of groups. Because students will be working together for longer periods of time, they need more structure in the form of rope. We are going to go over the types of rope that you need when you do a 3D lesson. Please turn to page 55, Rope for 3D Model Lessons. In cooperative learning literature, the term generally used for rope is positive interdependence. Rope is a term PLS Third Learning coined for achieving student outcomes through cooperative learning to help you remember this concept. Positive interdependence is the rope that ties group members together. Without rope, there is little incentive for groups to work together. Positive interdependence is the heart of effective group learning. Have you heard the phrase contrived caring? It would be nice if students in groups would immediately care about each other. However, they rarely do. So caring must be structured until real caring takes over. It is contrived because students may not care about each other to begin with. Your goal is that down the road, they will really care about each other. You may have to use rope for a while before students get over their stereotypes and bond. We need to tie students together with positive interdependence, rope. The first letter of rope, the R, stands for resources. What do we call resources in the classroom? People and materials. The resources in the classroom are materials and people. Resource interdependence has to do with the distribution of materials and people. You have had some experience with this concept in starters. Teachers take charge of structuring how resources are distributed in groups for 3D lessons just as they did for starters. The major resource in any group is the people within that group. People resources can be distributed by assigning roles, just as we did in starters. In the 3D model, we will build in resource interdependence by assigning roles and limiting materials. We will limit materials by limiting and jigsawing content as well as limiting tools. First, we will look at limiting roles. We assigned roles in starters, but in 3Ds, we will more clearly define roles for our students. We will spend time teaching students how they should look and sound when they are carrying out their roles. Roles are assigned by the teacher and rotated daily among group members. You want students to experience a variety of roles. There are times when you tell groups which roles they need, and let them decide who will do what. This approach requires less rope than if the teacher chooses. Be aware of assigning roles that allow group members to work independently, especially roles that allow a group member to leave a group to perform his or her task. These two fellows are working on the same task, yet working independently. So take a look at the screen. Now look at the results. They each went to opposite ends of the wall and worked independently, even though they were working on the same project. Again, look at the results. If they were following our 3D model, they would work side by side, each with a different role. One might be the measurer and mortar layer. The other might be the brick fetcher and level checker. Side by side, they would build the wall. This same situation occurs in classrooms that are supposed to be employing cooperative learning. For example, in 5th grade, Allison and her friend were assigned to do a cooperative learning report on Africa. They were given 3 weeks to complete the assignment. They met once and divided up the work. Each then worked alone, compiling the information. On the day the report was due, they came back together, decided how they would report, and gave their report. They never worked together in the interim. This teacher called this cooperative learning. We call it working alone. Roles are specific responsibilities that help the group function. Read the list of responsibilities you can assign to group members under the heading Assign Roles on page 55. They are basically the same as those we used in starters. Again, this is only a partial list of roles that you can assign, and you can give these roles any names that you wish. Story time! An 8th grade teacher noticed that one of her boys, Albert, was hitchhiking in his cooperative group, acting as if he were just along for the ride. He was not participating to the degree she wanted. She knew that the main antidote for hitchhikers is to strengthen positive interdependence, to add more rope. She had been allowing students to choose their own roles, and Albert had always chosen the role of messenger. She decided to structure the roles herself, instead of letting students choose their own. She used what she called the fake random method of assigning roles. Each person in each group gave him or herself a number from 1 to 4. She asked the ones to raise their hands. Albert did not, so she said, "Ones, you are the messengers today." She asked the 2s to raise their hands. He did not, so she said, "2s, you are the materials keepers today. Your job is to keep the materials until group members are ready for them." She asked the 3s to raise their hands. Albert did. So she said, "3s, you are the writer reporters today." Notice that when Albert raised his hand, she gave him the role she wanted him to have. This teacher also built into her directions for rope the rule that group members could not change roles. Whichever role a student got was the one he or she had to perform in the group, as long as it met that day. What do you think was the first thing Albert tried to do? Yep, he tried to exchange roles with the messenger. The messenger told him, "No way. We cannot change roles. It is part of the directions." Albert was stuck with being the writer-reporter. Did he do it perfectly? No. He rocked back on the legs of his chair and drifted off on little mini vacations in his mind. Then he would rock forward just in time to write. Then he would rock back again and come forward again to write. When it came time to report, he had some things written down and he gave a report. It was not the best one, but it was adequate. The teacher said that just changing how she built in roles improved Albert's participation dramatically. All she did was change one small piece of rope. So, assigning roles is one way to apply rope through resource interdependence. You will learn to apply it in the right way at the right time. Please turn to page 56, Limit Materials. The teacher limits the materials given to the group in several ways. Limit sources of content. First, let's consider how we can limit sources of content. Please read the list under Limit Sources of Content on page 56. You limit the resources students have for the content they are working on when you give a group only one of the items on the list. That way, the group is forced to share the content resource. For example, if they are assigned to write a new ending to a story together, give them only one copy of the story. If they are to review a chapter for a test, give them only one textbook. Limit materials, jigsaw content. The term jigsawing, when used in reference to cooperative learning, means bringing parts together to form a whole, like someone would do with parts of a puzzle. The type of jigsaw strategy recommended here gives each group member a piece of information, which he or she in turn teaches to the others in the group. Their job is to help the others understand the part of the puzzle that they hold. In the PLS course, Designing Motivation for All Learners, jigsawing is taught as a form of cooperative learning in which students are placed in home-based groups. Each home-based group member joins expert groups to learn information, and then returns to teach what he or she learned to their home-based groups. This is a very sophisticated type of jigsawing and is not recommended until 3D models have been practiced in the classroom for several months. The type of jigsawing we are referring to here is primarily the simpler form. For example, during a 3D cooperative lesson created to help students learn spelling words, each student in a group of 3 gets 4 different words, each written on a different card. The assignment is for students to learn their own 4 words and then teach them to their fellow group members. Group members must hold on to their own 4 cards at all times. They can hold them up and show them to the others, and they may write down another person's words, but they cannot hold that person's cards. No one person can collect all the cards and take over. When studying Benjamin Banneker's life, students are placed in groups of 4 for a 3D cooperative lesson. The teacher makes up 4 envelopes, each containing information about him. Each person in the group gets an envelope. Number 1 contains 2 paragraphs on Banneker's childhood. Number 2 contains 2 paragraphs on his prediction of the solar eclipse. Number 3 contains 2 paragraphs on the wooden clock he designed. Number 4 contains 2 paragraphs on the development of his almanac. Students prepare a report using the information provided in each person's envelope. Again, they must hold on to their own paragraphs. They can read them or hold them up to be read, but they cannot physically give them to another group member. On day 1 of an ecology lesson, home-based groups are formed to do a 3D cooperative lesson. Each student in the home-based group goes to a different expert group to become an expert on the material provided there. In group 1, 5 students learn from a magazine provided. They quiz each other, helping each group member master the material in order to become an expert. The other expert groups go through the same procedures with different materials, such as Group 2 reads newspapers, Group 3 listens to tapes, Group 4 uses an encyclopedia, Group 5 uses pamphlets. On the second day, the experts return to their home-based groups and experience another 3D lesson. Each home-based group has a member who is an expert on the information presented in the magazines. There is also one expert from the newspaper, tape, encyclopedia, and pamphlet groups. Home-based groups create a poster or report, including some information from each expert. Each person's part of the puzzle is used in the group product. Please note that forming expert groups in the manner described is a highly sophisticated form of jigsawing content. It might not be used until the second semester, after less sophisticated forms of limiting sources of content have been experienced in 3D lessons. You need to have your classes grow and evolve in their sophistication with cooperative learning, beginning with starters. Your students need to have lots of experience doing starters, developing interpersonal skills, and doing simpler forms of jigsawing in the 3D model before you give them a complicated jigsaw to do. Limit tools. On page 56, read limit tools. Stop before summary. If a group has only one pair of scissors, only one person can cut at a time. If a group has only one calculator, only one person at a time can make calculations. When you limit tools, you increase rope in your groups, since members are forced to rely on one another by sharing the limited materials. If there is any confusion as to whether something falls under limit sources of content or limit tools, remember that content deals directly with subject matter that is being covered, and tools are physical items used to create a product. In some situations, an item might be considered a content resource, while in other situations, it may serve as a tool. For example, if the student's goal is to find definitions of words, a dictionary would be a content item. If students are writing a paper about an eclipse using magazine articles for a content source, they might need a dictionary to check on spelling. In this case, the dictionary becomes a tool. Resource interdependence doesn't ensure that students will work together. However, every layer of rope you add improves the chances that the Houdinis in your classroom, those students who often manage to escape, will work in their groups. Now it is time to apply the R in rope. Please turn to page 57, Resource Interdependence Activity. Follow the directions for A, B, and C to create examples of how to build in resource interdependence. You will work in Canvas Modules, Section 3, Part 1, Resource Interdependence Activity Discussion Area. Please pause the narration until you finish this activity. Sample answers for Part A. 1 videotape, 1 storybook, 1 draft of a story, 1 periodic table of elements, 1 table of values for math, 1 political cartoon, 1 recipe. Sample answers for Part B. Highlighter, crayon, compass, stove, tape recorder, video camera. Sample answers for Part C. Parts of a report, research pieces, steps for how to do something. Time for a retention check. Number 1, what does the R in rope stand for? The answer, resources. Number 2, what are the resources that are limited? The answers, roles, sources of content, and tools. Number 3, what is one way to limit the sources of content? The answer, jigsaw content. The rest of this session will be for you to work independently through the material. There will now be narrated PowerPoints on Canvas, Modules Section 3, Part 1, to walk you through the rest of today's activities. Please be sure to post the activities in the discussion area or submitted assignment area before our next class. Remember, even though these activities are not graded, they must be completed to report your successful completion to your university partner. Immediately after this introduction, please return to Canvas, Modules, Section 3, Part 1, the Cooperative Learning 3D Model. Your first video will explore product interdependence, where you will share one product. Your second video will highlight environmental interdependence, where you will see how things come together in the classroom to make this learning successful. Your third video integrates the PALS acronym, so you work effectively in the obligation to others section. Your fourth video highlights the choices of positive interdependence. Finally, we will be introduced to a 3D model lesson focusing on the research behind cooperative learning. For this particular section, please make sure you are able to work together in the Zoom conference area to have a more authentic experience. Don't forget to check off that you have completed all section activities, including your section reflection. Let the good times begin. If you have any questions while you work, please call or email your instructor. This concludes Section 3, Part 1, Introduction. Please continue to Module Section 3, Part 1, the Cooperative Learning 3D Model, Product Interdependence.